Y'all, today's show is so good.
But number one, I've never seen an intro like that.
It is my hope and desire that not only will episode 30 still be fun, but episode 300 will be even more fun. You are made for something great, so go and be awesome.
Ten seconds remaining.
Hello, and welcome to the show. My name is Renee Hastings, and I'm your host of Renee Speaks. Y'all, today's show is brought to you by Executive Help Now. And at Executive Help Now, we are all about simplifying your business so that you can focus on what really matters most. From streamlining operations to managing administrative tasks and producing podcast shows that keep everything organized. Our team is here to help you thrive. So if you're ready to make life a little bit easier, visit us at www.executivehelpnow.org. Y'all, today's guest is nothing short of amazing. His name is Scott Maderer, and he launched Inspired Stewardship with his wife, Carrie, in 2011 to help Christian men and couples align their time, talent, and treasures with their God-given calling. As a certified human behavior consultant and members of the John Maxwell team, Scott and Carrie guide others in understanding themselves and those around them to live more authentically, serve others, and build the kingdom. Since taking the business full-time in 2017, Scott has worked with clients through one-on-one coaching, speaking engagements, and transformative workshops. His new book, Inspired Living: Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures, was published by Morgan James on July 2nd, 2024. Y'all put your hands together for Scott Maderer. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic, thank you.
You know, you ought to dial up the energy a little bit more. You're a little bland.
Hey, I do what I can.
I'm sitting here listening to the behavior. You mentioned the behavior consultant part, so I can't help but listen to people and start trying to, kind of place their personality type. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, you know what? I want to know what my personality type is? I think I do. I may have.
There aren't any bad ones, so it's always good. There aren't any bad ones. That's one of the nice things about the model that I use, which is DISC, is it's very important to recognize that it's not a matter of good, bad, or this one's better or that one's better. It's really a matter of learning it as a lens of how to communicate, how to understand people, and how to understand yourself. So there isn't a good or bad. There just is. This is just how you were wired. This is just how you were built. And when you look at it that way, that it's just more fun. It's never, because that's, I think, a problem with a lot of the personality stuff and communication stuff that's out there, is it's almost like, oh, I wanted that one, I don't like being this. I want to be that. That's not the way to look at it.
Yeah, no, definitely not. We were definitely, I believe too, just like you, that we were all born with our own unique gifts, skills, talents, abilities, and there's no other one like us. So only we have what we have. And so we are all uniquely gifted and blessed. And I'm just so thankful for that. And so, yeah, my personality can be a little big sometimes and full of energy because I love life. I absolutely love life. I know that there's a bunch of crazy going on, but in my world, I try to shield, like put myself in this little bubble, which may or may not be healthy. I'm just saying. Don't judge me.
It's like everything else. There's a good side and a bad side.
Exactly. And I know my limitations, and I know where I have to stop worrying and turn things over to the one and only one who can handle all these things. And that is our creator, God himself. So I don't try to be that. And I try to live life thankful and grateful for the days that I get to have, and make sure that each and every one of them counts, so that I can leave an impact or some sort of legacy for that lets people know that they were thought about, they were considered, that they were a part of a blessing in my life.
Amen.
So,
yep.
Yeah, so that's my MO.
I often tell people the best day of my life was when I realized there was a God. The second best day is when I realized it wasn't me.
I love that.
I will let people know there was a gap between those 2 days, by the way, too. There was a period where it's like, yes, and I've got no, you're not.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, Scott, I can relate. Trust me, I've come a long way on this journey. But tell us about yours. Tell us about how you got to this place where you are today that led you and your wife to start Inspired Stewardship.
Yeah, so, it's kind of one of those things, like everybody looking back on it, there's dots I can connect. Of course, when I was living it was just the life I was living. So I actually started life as wanting to go into medical research, but my mom will tell you I was always that kid, even from a very young age, that other people came to for advice, for help. Of course, that always made high school really interesting, because I was the guy that all the girls came to for advice about guys, as opposed to the guy they came to because they wanted to date. So it works out later. But at the time it was challenging. But I kind of went through that, and I wanted to do medical research. I went to school for medical research, did that for a little while, and realized, hey, wait a minute, this is really about chasing grant money. I don't want to chase grant money the rest of my life. I became a school teacher, did that for 16 years, loved teaching, loved working with the kids. And the part that really fed me and gave me energy, and that I always felt this was the part of teaching that I'm designed to do, was when I was interacting with the kids, not just on the, hey, let's study the chapter and do the questions at the back of the book, but engaging with them on life and making decisions and figuring out, building resilience, developing good habits, mindset, behavior, all of those intangibles that get taught as part of teaching. So I taught science. So it was actually kind of easy to do that, because science is one of those interactive subjects that naturally lends itself to going deeper and thinking bigger. Did that for 16 years, loved teaching, but eventually kind of burned out on that, pivoted, went into the corporate world, did that for 11 years, worked myself up into a senior management position, climbed the corporate ladder and did all of that. In the middle of that, kind of at the end of teaching and before I went into corporate, my wife and I went through a period where we were financially challenged. One of the reasons I left teaching is we had about $60,000 worth in debt. And at the time I made about $40,000 a year. And we were like, this is not working. I was suicidal because of finances. Number one cause of male suicide is actually financial stress, financial strain. I was one of those people on that path. My wife and I were not communicating. We weren't talking. We weren't fighting. We just weren't talking, and probably headed towards a divorce. And eventually some things changed. Some things came into my life. I kind of came clean to my wife and said, hey, this is what's going on. What was interesting is she kind of already knew, even though I was protecting her. Us men, I'm going to protect my wife from all of. Yeah, my wife's a smart lady. She knew what was going on. But she was shielding me. I was shielding her. We weren't talking. That was kind of the end result of that. And we said, wait a minute. We're going to turn this around. We're going to do something different. The career change happened. Other things happened. We started living in a really weird way. We actually paid off $854.42. Sorry, my dyslexia kicked in. Not that I know it to the penny, but I know it to the penny.
Right.
2 years, 11 months to do that.
Wow.
And at the time, our average income was $55,000. So it did go up during that period, but the average was 55. People are like, how do you do that? And that's what happened. People started coming to us and going, y'all are weird. Y'all are doing weird stuff. can you help us be weird? And out of that came the coaching. And so while I'm climbing the corporate ladder on the side, I'm building this coaching business. And then I realized, wait a minute, I don't really want to do the corporate thing. Yes, there's stuff about it I love. That a lot of people have told me, oh, this is the dream job, high 6-figure salary, lots of benefits, all of this great stuff. They're like, you're crazy to leave that and go do your own business. And I'm like, yeah, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and again, my mother looks at me and it's like, dude, you were a coach when you were 8 years old. You just didn't know it, She did. I didn't. My mom's a smart lady too. So, she knew what was going on. And so eventually that started the coaching business on the side. I reversed my climb. I went down the corporate ladder instead of up the corporate ladder and kind of pivoted out and launched the full-time business with my wife. And now, since 2017, this is what I do. My commute's a lot better. Worked with over 1,000 clients in over 20 countries, 38 states, all over the world, all over the country. And this jazzes me each and every day.
Wow. What a journey. What a story. And hand claps to you for coming out of debt. That is fantastic. That is not an easy feat. So,
and we've stayed debt free since then too, because I think that's important to add, because a lot of people get out of debt. It's even harder to stay out of debt.
Right. Exactly. So yes, I know what a challenge that can be. When you are in over your head and you're like, oh my word. And the discipline that it takes and the lifestyle changes that you need to make in order to beat it down. It's like a beast, and you just got to continually beat it down. But they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And you did that thing. And so I am so proud of you and so happy for you and excited that is your testimony and that you get to be on this side of it now and able to share that with so many others. And I also love that you got to be a teacher influencing lives for 16 years and speaking into them, because I think I just have a passion for teachers because I know the importance of their work. And I just feel like they're so undervalued and underpaid, and that they definitely need to be paid a whole lot better, because the next generation is tied up in everything that they're learning from you, being their influence and their mentor and the people that they look up to for almost 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. And that's really appropriate because I did teach middle school during that period. So, and I actually tell people, I'm like, middle school teachers and kindergarten teachers need combat pay. Okay. It's a whole other thing.
Bless your heart. Oh my word. Thank you.
Middle school and kindergarten, either one.
Yeah, I know it is. It can be a challenge, but oh my word, so rewarding. And our future generations, thank you.
Well, and that's the cool thing is, I still have students that reach out to me and will, talk to me about things that now, they're adults, they've got kids of their own and all of that, former students of mine that reach out, and it is cool. And I think one of the problems with teaching is you put all of those seeds out and you don't usually get the harvest. You don't usually get to see the kid that, 10 years later becomes a doctor. And part of the reason, not the whole reason, but part of the reason is something that happened in your classroom, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it was, that made them realize, wow, this is it. This is what I need to do. This is my calling. This is my passion and my purpose. Yeah. And that's the part that is valuable and fun as a teacher. And unfortunately, that's the very feedback you almost never get as a teacher. You don't get to hear those stories. So I think it's important for teachers to realize that.
Right. Well, but you get those few who you've left such an impact that years and years later, they'll reach back out to you and they'll say, I don't know if you remember me, but you said this, and this, and it truly made a difference in my life. And now I am this, and this because of what you said.
That's the funny thing too, is that a lot of times they'll tell you something you said and you're going, No idea. It's like, I don't remember saying that, but okay.
I'll take it.
I'm going to take it.
I love it. So that kind of is a perfect segue into you and your wife, Carrie, and this question I have about what it means to you personally to live an inspired life, because I'm sure that's what you try to do with your students and what you do
It
daily.
is. It is. It's, and that's why the book title was Inspired Living. The word for me, inspired, also means intentional.
Mm.
I think all too often we live our life reacting to things as opposed to acting into things. And
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, there are things in your life that you have no control over. And then there are
Mhm.
things in your life that you have control over. And of
Mhm.
course, part of the key is knowing the difference between those two. See earlier conversation about not being God. But it is that kind of recognition of, wait a minute, there are things that I can intentionally do to live my life the way I want to. So it's an example of that. One of my stated things that's important to me is family. So
Mhm.
I've deliberately created things that allow me to spend time and energy with my family. So like when my son was in high school, he was in band. As soon as the band schedule came out, I went to my calendar and I blocked off all of the band time. That's now a priority. First thing, I'm going to go and see my son perform. So
Mhm.
why? Because it was important to me that he sees me in the audience. It was
Mm.
important. And that's the inspiration. That sounds like, quote, a little thing, but it's not. It's huge, because I've dealt with people all the time where, whether it's time, whether it's money, whatever it is, they've got their priorities screwed up. And because of that, they're telling you, oh, family's important to me. And then you're looking at them, they're like, well, I have to work late tonight and I'm skipping my daughter's soccer game. It's like,
Mhm.
those aren't in alignment. And so
They don't go together.
is alignment. It's being intentional about aligning your life where the values that you say you have are the actual values that you're living out. And I
Right.
think that's a lot harder to do than we think about. But in reality, that's it. That's what inspiration and living an inspired life means.
Yes, absolutely. And making those decisions. And sometimes as a business owner, you may be in the middle of a big deal, or you may be in the middle of a contract negotiation, or you may be in the middle of dealing with a HR issue or a matter, or an employee dealing with some things or whatever. And those things really are important to you in the moment because you want to keep things
Mhm.
consistent and keep things level and going in the business. But if they say, my family is most important to me, and that's why I do what I do, then the words need to have some teeth.
You need to
And
live that out.
they need to live that out. And one of the ways you do that is by, I love how you said, blocking the time on your calendar. When you get your kids' schedule for their soccer games, for their dance recitals, for their whatever it is that they're in, you want to show up. And even the parent teacher conferences.
Yeah, whatever it is. And again, that's an example, but it's about being intentional about how you align your time, your talent, and your treasures, right? That's the three
Right.
areas that I talk about in stewardship.
Yeah.
And what happens all too often is, like I said, we live it by accident. And a lot of times we make up excuses. You'll go back to that business owner, and you've got a situation where I'm going to kind of cover two possibilities. One, where like you're in that sales situation and you feel like, oh, I've got to be there for my client. I've got to respond right away. I can't be out of the office on Friday afternoon to go to that parent teacher conference because my client would expect me to answer immediately. You know what? I've discovered that if you actually just tell the client, hey, I really want to be responsive to you, but Friday afternoon, I've got a parent teacher conference and family is really important to me. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to be present. I'll be out of touch for a couple of hours, but I'm going to check email as soon as I'm off. And if you've got a question, I'll follow up as quickly as I can.
Right.
I've never had a client look at something like that and go, no, you've got to be on it. They're like, dude, okay. It actually shows them, because think about it. They want to be doing that too.
Right.
It's relatable. If anything, it actually makes you more relatable and more
Right.
valuable to them. It doesn't take it away. And then let's turn it around and let's say, what about that situation that comes up on Friday afternoon and it's truly an HR emergency? This is like you've really run into a major issue at work, and we're talking boxes and security escorting people out of the business kind of situation, that kind of thing where your presence really does have to be there. Well, then communication is still the important thing. Only now the communication is to mom or to the kid or to the, depending on the situation, and saying, hey, here's why this is interrupting. And my priority kind of had to get reordered. And this is what I'm going to do. And by the way, here's what I'm, later on, you have that conversation about how can we keep that from happening again? Because in reality there are times that it's like, no, I do actually have to reorder my priority. But is that the exception or is that the rule? I've seen so many people where that's the rule. They miss every single game. They've got an excuse every single parent-teacher meeting. Okay, that's different. Now that's a pattern. That's no longer an exception. That is your rule.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And I love how you said clients won't leave you because you missed an appointment. And especially if you say,
not if you communicate.
Yeah, you communicate. And I would even just go so far as to say, I have a conflict. Yeah. You know what I mean? That they don't have to know all your business unless but like you said, it does make you more human.
Sometimes sharing a little bit of your business. I mean, I don't necessarily share every detail of everything, but and there's a balancing act there.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I've had salespeople as an example that I've worked with that are like, I have to answer email within 30 seconds of getting it. It's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
You have to establish expectations. Yes. No, you don't. And yeah, I do. I'm like, no. And then we reorder and they do it a different way. And, maybe they answer email 3 times a day and the world doesn't collapse.
That's right. And I love that. And, there's so many different things that we can do to manage people's expectations so that you don't have to feel like you're on the hook to respond to every single email every 2 seconds. So one of the things that I've done in the past for some of our clients is in the signature block of their emails, you can put in there, thanks for your message. I'll respond to messages at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. daily. I'll get back to you at the next time that I'm free, or something to that effect. Maybe not that extreme or whatever, but you manage the expectation. You just put it right there in the signature block. And then on your own calendar, when it's time for you to go to your child's event or to have dinner at home or whatever it looks like, make yourself an appointment that says en route to school. And that appointment has a 1-hour reminder on it that says, this is a priority. I need to get ready to start leaving at this time so I'm not late to my thing that I have to do with my family.
Right. Yep.
There's so much you can do.
It's setting boundaries, it's setting communication and expectations. And I do the same thing, by the way, in the email signature. And you can go a step further. You can add to that, if this is actually an emergency, or if you need an immediate answer, here's how you elevate it. Maybe that's another person they need to contact. Maybe that's your cell phone number. Depends on what the situation is. But and then, if you're a leader or you're the owner, then you also get to teach your employees what's a real emergency and what's not, because we actually have to communicate about that and what are the rules around that. So, when I was in corporate, I had, I taught my employees, if my door is closed, here's what counts as an emergency. If my door is open, you're welcome to come in, and you can interrupt me because what I'm doing is something that doesn't require that concentration and that impact time.
Right.
You know what? I never had a problem with it. My boss did that. My boss respected it. My boss would come down the hall and be like, oh, Scott's door is closed. I'll just send him an email and he can get back to me.
There you go.
Because they learned that worked.
That's so important. And then even too, going maybe even a step further is giving your team authority and making them accountable for the decisions that they make in your absence. It's like, look, giving them authority, I think is the word that I'm looking for, so that when you're not around, they have the ability to say, well, this is a situation or that's a situation, and I'll handle this part. And when Scott comes back, then he can handle the rest.
Right.
Or, something to that. You don't have to be the one as the boss. You don't have to be the one to do all the things and make all the decisions. Let your team help you. That's what you hired them for. They have skills, they have knowledge, they have brains, they understand what you're going through and what your goals are and what the end result should look like.
Yeah.
Give them the
At
power.
the end of the day, if you're the only one that can make the decision, then you haven't done a very good job of hiring.
Nope. Absolutely not. That'll preach right there.
I tell people all the time, it's like, yeah, no, if you're the smartest person in your business, you need to hire better. Because no offense, but you should not be the master of everything in your business. And yet, unfortunately, and again, for good reason, a lot of times people started a business because they saw what was wrong somewhere else, or they saw that, they had those frustrations. They're good at the technical side of it. And they're like, I'm going to go start my own thing. And again, that's all good stuff. But then you also have to realize there's a whole nother side that you have to learn and equip, whether it's learning how to manage people, whether it's learning how to do payroll, whether it's, and again, this is where bringing in other people and other experts, you hire a VA, or you hire a coach, or you hire somebody, you bring in the team one way or the other at the appropriate point so that you can outsource and delegate and multiply, because you only have so much time. You only have so many brain cells. You only have so much ability to do stuff, and you're always going to be the lid until you find ways to multiply, automate, outsource, delegate, do all of those other things.
Agreed. 100%. So well said. So are there any other ways that someone can begin to take control of their time when life feels overwhelming?
The first step to everything is always awareness. So one of the exercises, and people can literally do this, I can teach you right now how to do it. So there's no big fancy thing. Take a sheet of paper, write down the left-hand side every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes or even every hour. I wouldn't go over an hour, but every block of time, every 30 minutes. So I get up in the morning at 5:30, 5:30 to 6, 6 to 6:30, so on. Write down the side of the paper. And then set a silent alarm on your watch or on your phone to vibrate every 50 minutes, 30 minutes, whichever time period you picked. And whenever it goes off, just jot down on the sheet of paper next to the time, kind of what were you doing during that block of time? I was doom scrolling on Facebook. I was watching Netflix. I was answering emails. I was in a meeting, whatever. Don't have to provide a lot of detail, but just kind of what were some of the main things you did during that 30-minute time block. And then come back after doing that a couple of days, maybe a week, and look for patterns. First off, I will guarantee you will be shocked. There will be something in your life, and I'm going to pick on TV for a minute. It's not always TV, but I'm going to pick on TV because it's often TV. And somebody will ask you, how many hours of TV do you watch a week? And you'll be like, hour and a half, maybe 2. And then you'll capture it on this timesheet, and it's way more than you thought it was going to be. And you're like, maybe it's answering email, back to our earlier comment. You're like, oh yeah, it only takes me 30, 40 minutes a day. No, it doesn't. It takes you 5 hours, or whatever it is, right? Some insane thing. And you were blind to it because it had just sort of become normal. It had just become a habit. It just become what you do. And so becoming aware of it then allows you to start making intentional decisions. Now, there's a million tools you can implement, time blocking. We've talked about that already. We've talked about those sorts of things that you can put into your task list, making appointments with yourself, all sorts of tools in the toolbox. But until you actually know where your time is going, you're just throwing tools at it at random. You don't even know what to fix.
Right.
And if your time is going where you'd want it to go, yay. What can I do to keep making that happen? And if my time is going where I don't want it to go, okay, what can I do to get rid of that? And I talk about that in terms of what I call friction and smoothness. The way to change habits or the change behavior is if there's something you're doing and you don't want to do it, create friction around it, make it harder. And if there's something that you do want to do, you either want to continue to do or start doing, make it smoother. Example, get out of bed in the morning and go for a walk. Okay, but I have a tendency to hit the snooze button. I need to introduce friction around that. I'm going to put the alarm clock on the other side of the room. Guess what? Now I have to get out of bed to hit the snooze button. And if
Right.
I'm up and out of bed, I'm more likely to stay up and out of bed. So
Yeah.
that right there introduced friction about the hitting the snooze button. I want to make it easier for me to go for a walk, lay out my clothes the night before, have my shoes laid out. And guess what? They're sitting right next to the alarm clock. So when I
Mhm.
walk over there and hit the alarm clock, it's real easy for me to just go ahead and throw on my walking clothes, go get a drink of water, go get a cup of coffee, whatever it is, head out the door and go for my walk. So if you
Mhm.
think about friction and smoothness as a framework, you can apply that in a lot of different ways to make your time more aligned with where you actually want to spend it. But the first step is actually knowing where it's going. And so that's why I recommend that 15 or 30-minute miracle is just a time audit to figure out where you're actually spending your time.
Wow, that's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, time audit definitely is so telling. Because
I've never had anyone do it and come back and not be surprised.
right.
There's something always that you come back and you're like, really? It's like, no matter. And same thing, by the way, with money. All tracking your money is the same thing. It's an audit for your money. If you go back and you audit where you spent your money, it's the same thing. It's awareness, because somebody will tell me, "Oh, I only spent about $200 going out to eat." No, you don't. And then they audit. It's like, that's $800, not 200. It's it's always the same problem in both of those, because they're finite resources, and we
Mhm.
become blind to where it's actually going because we're not paying attention.
That's right. That's right. It's like kind of when you eat and watch television or do something at the same time, you tend to eat more because you're not paying attention because you're
Not paying attention.
mindlessly doing this thing. And we have so
Mhm.
many different things that we do that with, like spending money and how we're spending our time. So I love that awareness piece, doing a time and money audit, game changers in your own personal life and your business as well. So, what mindset shifts then do people need to move from busyness to purpose?
The busyness, by the way, has become almost a badge of honor, and I hate it. In fact,
Same.
that's what we tell each other, right? You greet somebody and they go, "How you doing?" And there's two answers that we typically give. One is, "I'm fine," which is really just social lubrication for "please don't ask me that, go away." I'm sorry, but it is. It's a polite way of saying hi, and that's it. It doesn't mean anything. The other answer that we give a lot of times for friends and family is, "I'm busy." Okay.
Mm,
And then they'll commiserate with you. "Oh, yeah, I know. I'm busy too."
mm,
Busy has become a badge of honor. And think about what the word busy means. All it means is I'm doing a lot of stuff.
mhm.
So stop
Right.
and think. I can make you busy, and I can even pay you money. So I've got a pile of rocks in my backyard, and I'm going to pay someone $100 a day to go in my backyard and pick up a rock from one side of the yard, carry it to the other side of the yard, put it down, then go back to the pile, pick up another rock. By the way, if you move all the rocks, your job is then going to be pick them up from the new pile and carry them back to where the old pile was and set them down. That's all you're going to do all day long, is walk back and forth, carrying one rock at a time, back and forth from pile to pile.
Mm.
I'm going to pay
Yep.
you $100 a day. A lot of
Yep.
people would be like, "I ain't doing it." Okay. What if I paid you $1,000 a day, or $10,000 a day, or $100,000 a day? There is an amount of money where you would go, "I'll do that." But guess what? You're not going to do it for long. If I
Mm,
paid you $100,000, most people would do it a couple of days, maybe a week, and they'd be like, "I got enough. I'm good. Now I'm going to go do something else," because there's no purpose behind it. There's no passion behind it. You're not building a wall out of rocks. You're literally carrying a rock from one side to the other. There's nothing
mm,
purposeful behind it. So when
mm,
you realize that that's all that busy means, then the mindset is to shift and go, "Wait a minute, this isn't about doing more stuff. It's
right.
about stopping and thinking, what's actually the stuff that matters?" We're back
Mm,
to that blocking off time for your kid's soccer game. If that's what matters to you, put that down first, and make that the priority, make that most important. If that's not what matters to you, that's fine too, by the way. Make
mhm.
something else that priority and put that down first. but be honest with yourself and admit it and plan it and be purposeful behind it. And then what happens is you start living and shifting that way. So here's the little word twist. You're no longer allowed to say, I don't have time for that. Instead, you have to say, that's not a priority for me.
Oh, I love that.
The funny thing is you will make completely different decisions.
Okay, wait, hold on. Say that again for the people in the back.
Instead of saying, I don't have time for that, which we all say all the time, I don't have time for that. You have to say, that's not a priority for me. Let's go back to that kid's soccer game. We've got that example. I'm going to keep going back to the well. If you're sitting there with your coworker in the next cubicle and you're typing away and your coworker goes, Renee, didn't you have your daughter's soccer game to go to tonight? And you're like, yeah, I just don't have time for it. I'm too busy. They're going to pat you on the back and sympathize with you. They're going to be, oh, I'm so sorry. Work is so busy. I'm busy too, blah, blah, blah. Like that. If instead you looked at them and you go, you know what? It's just not a priority for me to go to my daughter's soccer game. They're probably going to smack you upside the head. And what's more, you're going to deserve it.
Right. That's right.
100%. Saying that out loud changes the decision you make, because if you say out loud, that's not a priority for me, and you're talking about daughter, you're probably going to go, wait a minute, that is a priority for me. I need to shut down the computer and go to my daughter's soccer game, and I'll come back to this stuff later. I can do this after she goes to bed. After we have ice cream after the game or whatever. So it literally shifts the way you think from busy to productive, because I don't have time is a busy statement. That's not a priority for me as a productivity statement.
Oh, that is just genius. I love that. So I don't have time basically is another way of saying that's not a priority.
That's really what you're saying.
That's what you're saying. That's not a priority for me. And so as you're saying that, I'm thinking in my head, the wheels are kind of turning like, okay, when do I say that? And how often do I say that? And when is that my reality? And does that really apply in my own life? And I'm thinking, so now I'm doing some introspection to figure out, okay, what do I need to change about me and the things that I prioritize over other things that I say are important to me, right? All these nuggets and these seeds of wisdom just dropping into my soul.
So I'll give you another quick one, just because I don't want to leave this one out. So the other language tweak is you're no longer allowed to say, this one works with money. It also works with time. You're no longer allowed to say, I had to. So I had to buy a new car. I had to skip my daughter's soccer game. I had to, whatever it is, right? You can see how by the way, the priority works in time and money both too. They work, the frameworks work the same way because the resources are the same, but the application is a little different. But if I look at that, I say, I had to, instead, what you have to say is, I chose to.
I chose.
Because here's the thing, you always have a choice.
That's right.
No matter what, you have a choice,
Yeah.
And because I can make it really extreme. I mean, somebody holding a gun to my head says, hey, Scott, you've got to do this or else the obvious thing's going to happen. There are some things that you could tell me and I'm going to be like, you're just going to have to shoot me because I'm not going to do that. That is just not so far out of my acceptable things that I would be able to do. I cannot do that. There are other things that they would do that, and I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. Give me your money. Here's my wallet. Go for it. I don't care. Money's not that important. I can replace that. But hurt my wife, hurt my kids, we're going to have a different conversation. So there's limits that we all have, but we kind of ignore them and shield them by saying something like I had to, which makes it sound like, well, see, I didn't have any choice. I had to do that. No, you didn't. You had a choice. You could have said no. You could have done something different. I'm not even saying you had a good choice. There could have been, every other choice could have been terrible, but it's still not a had to. You still chose the best choice. You're giving yourself power, because by saying I had to, you're abdicating your power. You're giving it up. You're saying, I don't have any power in this situation. Yes, you do.
That's right. All the time. We all have a choice in every single matter. There's very few times when we have to do anything.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to. So no one could ever say, I had to. So I love that. I love that language tweak because it really makes us take a good look at our own selves and the decisions that we are making for our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when you keep the power by saying, I chose to, then it helps you make better decisions.
You make better choices.
If you made a bad choice, you're like, oh, that wasn't the greatest choice to make. Maybe next time I'll choose something different. But at least you're aware that you're making these choices and you're not abdicating your responsibility for the choice that was made.
It's what lets you learn from the choice. When it was a bad choice, if I had to do it, well, then there's nothing to learn from it.
Right.
I didn't have a choice anyway. I had to do it. That was the only possibility. What can I learn from that? Nothing. But if I chose and then I look back later and I go, that was kind of a mistake. I probably shouldn't have done that. At least I can learn from it and go, next time, given those parameters. I mean, I bet that I made the best choice I could at the time that I made it with the information I had. Mm-hmm. Turns out I've now learned new information and wasn't the choice I should have made, you know.
Right.
But so next time I've got new information. I'm going to make a different choice. But it's recognizing that you've got that power that allows you to learn from it. Without choice, you can't learn, you can't grow, you can't change.
That's right. Oh, this is so good, Scott. So good. Oh, my word. I hope everyone in the audience listening today or listening on the podcast or replay later has gained some wisdom. Scott is dropping wisdom and knowledge on us today. So that will last a lifetime to help us make better choices. And Amber says, love these nuggets of wisdom for reframing our words. Yes, we need to reframe our words and take responsibility for our own choices because we always have a choice. Now, taking that a little bit further, how can people align their finances with their faith and their values? Because that's all a choice too.
Yep. And there's two pieces to that. So one is kind of like we talked about with time, doing an audit, because sitting down and going, where is my money going? Because again, you kind of have a rough idea, but I bet you it's not accurate for most of us because we haven't ever actually sat down and tracked where our money actually went. And by the way, that's as simple as taking statements and looking at them and categorizing things, right? What am I spending my money on? Spending this money on groceries. I'm spending that money on going out to eat, spending this money on entertainment, whatever it is. It does not need to be big and complicated. You can do it with a yellow notepad or Excel or, whatever. Don't, because so often we're looking for the right tool and that just becomes another way of procrastinating. Mm-hmm. This is 6th grade math, folks. You can do this. You don't need any fancy tech. We can add tech later to make things easier and all of that, but you don't need to add tech from the beginning. So the first part is the audit, just like we did with time. But I'm going to go a step further. With money especially, there's two other pieces that you need. One is going back and actually examining what are your values? What are your priorities? What is the most important thing? Because a lot of times when I tell people to set up a spending plan, or maybe you've heard the dreaded word budget, everyone hears the word budget and immediately like, I don't want to do that. It's so depressing. All it does is show me what I can't do. It's like, no, it doesn't. It shows you what you can do.
That's right.
Because the trick is build from the yeses. And what I mean is say, what is the most important thing? If you only had $1, what would you spend that dollar on? Well, for most of us, it's something like food or shelter, right? I mean, honestly, if we're honest, it's that stuff. Okay, but what happens when you get enough money that you've moved past basic needs? You can keep food on the table, you can keep the electric bill paid, you can keep shelter, you can do that. And now you get another dollar. Well, what are you going to do with that dollar? And what about the next dollar and the next dollar and the next dollar and the next dollar? What am I going to say yes to because it's the things I value the most? Is it in alignment? Again, if you say you value family, Great. Where does family show up in your budget? Is it paying for your kids' private school? Okay, great. That's a family value, and that's where you want to put dollars. But here's the thing. If you put those dollars there, there's an opportunity cost. That's a fancy economics way of saying, if I spend $1 on one thing, I can't spend it on something else.
Right.
That's all it means. So
Mhm.
it's true. And in fact, the only way I can spend $1 that I don't have is to go into debt. Okay, great. Debt's not good or bad, but what debt is I'm promising future income for something I'm getting today. That's really all I'm doing. I'm saying I'm going to pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today, for anyone that remembers the hamburger from Popeye. So, a Wimpy, right? When his name was Wimpy. I'm going to pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. That's all debt is, right? And I'm going to pay future for today. And of course, they charge you interest and for that privilege of them giving you some money today to do something that. But it starts making you go, wait a minute. These are the things that are these are the things that are most important. So these other things that are kind of below the line, are they important enough that I need to, quote, go into debt for it, or I need to make more money, or what do I need to do to get, to make things that are below the line get above the line? You start looking at your money less as limiting you and more as a resource that you can prioritize, you can plan, you can utilize, you can rearrange. And again, that's giving you what? That's giving you the ability to choose, the power to make those decisions and make sure that it's actually aligned with what's important to you. Because all too often, just you're living out of habit. You're spending the same way all the time because it's just easy. It's the pattern. And you don't have awareness of the pattern, so you can't change it and make different decisions.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. And like you said, it all goes back to awareness. So if we know where it's going, then that's the first step in fighting the battle of getting control over money issues or matters or things like that, and making sure that wherever your leftover dollars are going are in alignment with what you say your values are.
And are there even leftover dollars or not? And if there aren't, why not? And again, this business, personal, because everyone's always like, well, that works in personal finance, but not business. Yeah, it does. It's the same thing. We use different vocabulary. We have different categories.
Yeah.
It's not different. Again, I worked in corporate. My budget was $40-something million a year for the team that I ran. I was in charge of allocating that budget. It's the same thing. It just has more zeros. But it's not
to make a mistake with less zeros. And once you get the habits and the less zeros, then it's easier to grow to the more zeros.
The mindset, the framework is the same. The numbers are different. People always say, oh, I could just make more money. Well, I've worked with people that make $600,000 a year that are living paycheck to paycheck. Because it's not money, it's mindset.
It's mindset. It is completely mindset and your relationship with money. Like, what does money mean to you? What does the having of it mean to you? What is the knowledge that you may not have it mean to you? What feelings do those evoke in you? That whole relationship with money thing is so serious, and it is so deep that if a person doesn't recognize, number one, that it's an issue, then they're going to always have money problems. Always. Because they're not going to be aware. They're not going to address it. And if they are aware of it, they may be in denial until they get a grasp or get a hold of what their relationship truly is. For real. Not
money
just
tends to be a magnifying glass. It makes whatever character, behavior, habits, all of those things, it makes whatever those are bigger. So it's why a lot of people that win the lottery end up going bankrupt. It's not because they were quote unquote bad people or did something. It's literally the habits and behaviors that they had. They continued to live those habits and behaviors out. Only now we gave them $4 million. So they live it out with bigger numbers, but they do the same thing. And before you know it, they look up and they're like, I'm out of money. Because it's not the amount of money, it's the mindset and the behavior.
Right. Absolutely. I don't know why this thought just keeps popping in my head. When I was a single mom on welfare many, many years ago, and I was struggling to get off of the welfare system and make that transition from welfare to living on my own with the money I was making working, because it was just to help me to get to that next thing. And one of the people that I met with, or that was a coach or mentor to me, said, be sure to pay all your bills, your rent and your car and your daycare. Although I had some assistance for that, but pay all of your bills first on time. That was important. And then he said, whatever you have left, you put some in savings, but then so that you don't feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck, I got these 10 envelopes. And I had $20 left after each paycheck. And so I put $2 into each paycheck, into each of my little envelopes, so that every day I would have $2 in my pocket. And I felt like as long as I've got some money in my pocket, then I'm not broke. So, and that just has translated, I think, into the importance of not being self-indulgent and having to have everything right now.
Right.
And which is sometimes the way people sometimes think today. They're like, oh, I see it. I want it. I'm getting it. I don't care if I don't have the money. Yeah. No, that's not.
Delayed gratification is a powerful tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And Raquel's video says, very relevant discussion to my day-to-day. Thank you. Thank you, Raquel, for your input and sharing your thoughts with us. Very relevant for today. And Amber has a question. How do you get out of a scarcity mindset?
A lot of it is that shifts that we're talking about, of looking from what you don't have to what you do. So the biggest thing that I've seen is doing daily gratitude exercises. So and I'll give you a really challenging one. Sit down in the morning and write 3 things that you're grateful for today. Sit down in the evening and write 3 things that you're grateful that happened today. So the first 3 is 3 things that I'm looking forward to. The last 3 are 3 things that actually happened. They may or may not be the same things, right? Because sometimes we all have those days where it's like, this is what I'm looking forward to. Okay, none of that happened. Okay, great. And here's the challenge. For 30 days, you're not allowed to repeat. In other words, the 3 things that you come up with in the morning, the next morning have to be 3 different things. You can't come up with the same thing. And do that again and again for 30 days, okay, for a month. Same thing on the end of day. The 3 things that you come up with on Monday can't be the same 3 things on Tuesday, can't be those things. You can't repeat them. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. What we're trying to do is stretch our gratitude muscles. As a lot of times when we look at the world, we have a tendency to focus on loss. We have a tendency to focus on the negative. We have a tendency to focus on what we don't have. And this is training your brain to look for the things that you do have. And by the way, some of the stuff you're going to come up with is going to be little bitty small stuff. Some of it's going to be, my favorite coffee cup. Right. I'm just happy that my favorite coffee cup didn't break. Okay, great. That's fine. And some of them are going to be great big things. I'm happy that I have the wife that I do and how she speaks into my life. It doesn't matter. I'm not talking, this isn't about scale. This isn't about size. This isn't about world-changing stuff. It's literally just training your brain to look for the things that are blessings in your life. Yes. And if you do that consistently over time, you will discover that your brain will start looking for those things naturally. And you'll begin to shift from looking at what you don't have, scarcity, to what you do have and what opportunities there are out there. It'll really change what you see, because you literally program your brain to look for those opportunities, to be grateful, to find gratitude, to find things that bring me joy and energy and happiness and love and all of those other things. And you start looking at the world different.
Oh, that's so good. That just spoke to me. I just really appreciate that so much. What a great response to how to overcome that scarcity mindset. Amber says, wow, love that. Thank you. So good. So good. Because some people may not even realize that they have a scarcity mindset until they start receiving a few dollars or until they start getting a few blessings. And then they're like, how do they respond to that? Are they trying to hold on to them, or do they want to give them away to somebody else? Or are they afraid that they're going to disappear? All of these things happen when blessings come, or when money comes, or the idea of money goes, all of it. It is so critical, and I'm going to say this again, that we get to the root of our relationship with money, because it impacts not only how we live, but the choices that we make. And it's the mirror to whether or not the choices we are making are in alignment with the values that we say we have, which is basically the bottom line, I think, of what your message was for us today.
Absolutely. And it's a feedback loop, because as you become more able to see opportunities and be grateful, what's interesting is more comes your way. And this isn't mystical. This isn't magical. This is just the fact that stop and think for a minute. Who do you want to hang out with and spend time with? Do you want to spend time with Renee, who's happy and joyful and has a lot of energy? Or do you want to spend time with the person that gets on the call and is like, well, guess we got to do this again? You don't want to hang out with that person. Opportunities don't flow towards them because they're blocking them. It's not mystical. It's not, because we all talk about the secret and the magic and the this and that. It's not. It's the way that God has built the universe. He's wired us to want to be around people that are that way. We want to give opportunities to those people. We want to see them succeed. We want to root for them. We want to hang out with them. Yeah. And that leads to more opportunities. By the same token, if you have the scarcity mindset and you dwell on what you don't have and the negatives and you're always pushing things away, that also reinforces itself.
Yes.
And that's why that 30 days, that's why I said 30 days. It's a radical shift and gives it long enough that you can start to shift your mindset.
Absolutely. And even if you're having beans and rice for dinner,
doesn't matter.
At least you got some beans and you got some rice. Okay, some people don't have that. So what helped me overcome a scarcity mindset is remembering that it can always be worse. So be happy for what you have, because it can always be worse. Someone else is always in a worse situation than what you are. Even if you think you've hit rock bottom, somebody else's bottom is deeper than yours. So,
and what's more is it's a mindset of, so you mentioned earlier, not feeling broke. And I love the fact that you chose the word broke, because there is a difference between feeling poor and feeling broke. Broke is, I don't have money right now, or I don't have much right now, but right now, the key is the right now part. This is going to change. There are things I can do. You were, single mom, welfare. There's choices that you have, and there's choices you don't have. There's things that you can do. There's things that you can't do. But there are things you can do, and you're focused on those. And over time, that grows. Yeah. Poor is, I don't have any money, and that's always the way it's going to be. It's that permanency. It's that making it your reality, who you are. I am poor, as opposed to I simply just don't have some money right now. But I'm working to change that. One is I'm passing through, the others I'm going to live here.
Right. Oh, so good. Oh, I love that. God, this has been so great. I can't believe an hour has almost entirely gone by so fast. So in closing, what are some practical tools or first steps that you can give to our audience, or would recommend for somebody who's ready to live more intentionally and authentically?
So I've actually shared the two big exercises that I actually call on, for first steps, is the tracking the time and the tracking the money, to help them out. Especially if you've been listening to this and maybe you were driving or busy or multitasking the way a lot of us do. I actually have a resource page that includes these as downloads for folks. They can get them for free. There's no obligation, no cost, no nothing. So I actually put that over at my website, inspiredstewardship.com. And then for your listeners, they're /Renee Speaks. that has these tools. It has other resources, things about my book and all of that stuff there as well, if you're interested. But that way, if you heard some of these exercises and want to do them, there's actually more. So I set you through like 5 different steps. So we start with the awareness, and then we go through some action. And again, you can get them for time, you can get them for talent, or you can get them for treasure. So that button that says, yes, I want to master stewardship, just click there and it will take you to them. And then you can get more information about those resources as well.
Wonderful. And we have the website pulled up here. It's also in the show notes. Scott, you were made for something great. So go and be awesome.
Thank you.